One of the things that might frustrate you the most is the fact that as an ELA teacher, you have to cover all of the things. You have to cover reading, writing, grammar, spelling, vocabulary, so many different aspects of ELA. And one of the more frustrating parts about that is how in the heck do you fit that all into your class period? You might have 42 minutes, you might have 50 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, and it still just seems like there is not enough time in the day to get your students to where you want them to be in terms of their learning outcomes. So in this video, I'm going to show you how exactly to break up your class schedule and ensure that you can fit in everything that you need to teach as an ELA teacher. And if you love this video, subscribe to our channel so that you can get more like this. And the other thing I want to let you know about before we dive into everything is I have an entire workshop dedicated to this exact concept. We're going to cover a small piece of fitting it all in this particular video, and that workshop goes more in depth with a variety of other strategies that you can utilize as well. So I will include the link for that free workshop where you're watching this video. Definitely check that out afterwards. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to dive into our slides and I'm going to show you exactly how you can structure your ELA class periods. Now, the first thing that we're going to look at is exactly how to break down your class period. What sequence of events are you going to use? And this is how we suggest all of our EB teachers begin their class periods, teach their class periods, and then end their class periods. And they follow this sequence of events for a variety of reasons. And the first thing that we ask all of our teachers to do, or we suggest that they all do, is to start with a bell ringer. Now, this can be any bell ringer, but it serves a lot of purposes. And, one of those being it allows students the opportunity to practice the standards multiple times throughout the school year. The way that we've structured our bell ringers is students are practicing all of the standards. It's not just like, wacky word Wednesday. Every Wednesday is different depending on what standard students are going back and reviewing. So bell ringers serve as a really great way to spiral review concepts, as well as it's a great way to start your class period in terms of expectations for students. They know exactly what to do when they come into your class. There's no wasted time, 5-10 minutes of students getting settled. No, it's like, boom, they come into your class, they know exactly what they're doing. They sit down, they start their bell ringer. And it's just a really positive, great first start to your class period. The second part of your class period breakdown is then going to be what we call an into, through, or beyond lesson. And this is just the framework that we create all of our lessons around. So an into lesson is, you're introducing the concept to your students, you're getting them excited about it. And this is more something I go into more detail in that workshop that I talked about at the beginning. And then through lessons are like the heart of your lesson. This is where students are reading a text, interacting with a text, doing silent debates, Socratic seminars, things like that. And then a beyond lesson is the wrapping it up. This is where students are going to be assessed. They might write a response to literature, etc. Again, I go into more detail on that in that workshop. But this is like the meat of your class period. So you start with the bell ringer, 5 or 10 minutes. The next part of your class period is dedicated to like that main part of your lesson, whether this is reading, writing, grammar, or vocabulary, which again, I'll get to in just a second for how to break that up. And then sustained silent reading is at the very end of your class period. And this is just a great way to wrap up your class period. Things are calm. Students are given the opportunity to read, right? We want to create readers of our students, and giving them the opportunity to read every single day is really powerful. So this is just the general breakdown of our class periods that we suggest for all of our teachers. And now I want to show you what a daily breakdown might look like depending on the length of your class period. So that was, right, obviously the class period breakdown. Well, now what does that look like in terms of minutes or time that I'm dedicating to each of those minutes of my class period, depending on the length of time that I have? So here you'll see that we are making true use of our class time, right? That includes bell ringers every single day. And you are being intentional with that class time so that you're not wasting any time within your class period. And when you see the into, through, and beyond lessons mentioned here, that's what I was just talking about. Those are like the meat of your lessons, writing, grammar, etc. And having this framework for your daily breakdown is incredibly helpful. So now you know how to plan for every single day, right? You'll follow that same format day in and day out. So both you and your students know exactly what to expect. So if you have a 45-minute class period, you're going to dedicate part of your time to bell ringers and sustained silent reading rather. And you might make small adjustments to this. Maybe you're going to do 5 minutes of bell ringers and 5 minutes of sustained silent reading, but you have those bookends to your class period, and then you can reallocate that that time into these lessons here. 60 minutes, same thing. You might just give more time to read for students, or you might reallocate that time into the actual meat of the lesson. And then if you have a 90-minute class period, obviously you can break things up as well. But the purpose is, right, we're keeping the class period moving. We're not staying stagnant for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes with students in desks necessarily the entire time. We want to switch things up so that they're not getting bored easily in our class. So again, you can take these and adjust them as you need, but this is just a general framework, a general idea for you to get started, so you at least have a starting point. And then once you find something that works, some days you might do just a 5-minute bell ringer because you know maybe your lesson's going to take a little bit longer and you need to reallocate those minutes. But this gives you a very clear guideline, a very clear framework for how you're going to break down your class period every single day. Now, I want to talk about how do we fit everything all in? How do we fit grammar? How do we fit reading, writing, etc.? So I'm going to show you what this looks like on a larger scale. And I'm going to show you a scope and sequence example. And this is for, let's say, a 60-minute class period. And I know this looks like a lot of information, and it is, but that's okay. I'm going to walk you through it. And I want to just point out a few different things, right? You can see how I've added in our main parts of our unit. I haven't put in the bell ringers or the SSR each day because I know I'm going to do that anyways. What I've included here are those into, through, and beyond lessons. That's what I'm including. So I know exactly what I'll be teaching on any given day. So again, it might overwhelm you to look at, and that's okay. Again, that free workshop of fitting it all in is going to help explain this even more. And I wanted to just show this to you as an example. So you can see that I've included, let's start with vocabulary. Okay, this is the pink that you see on the scope and sequence. I've included vocabulary on Mondays, and every other Friday I have a test. That's it. That's when I teach vocabulary to my students. And then you'll also see that I've only included grammar on Wednesdays and Thursdays of every other week, with a grammar test at the end of the month, right? So you'll see grammar is what's in green. And the reason that I don't have grammar on every single day, because if you look at the standards, those language standards for grammar are a very small percentage of the overall standards. So I'm going to teach grammar and these concepts when I'm teaching writing as well, but I'm not necessarily dedicating huge chunks of my class period to teaching grammar. There's small parts of my standards that I get to cover right throughout this whole month, and you'll see all of my standards are over here. I also included my writing unit and reading unit being taught alongside each other because this is a longer class period. This is based on a 60-minute class period. So you'll see that I start with narrative writing, and you'll see all of my narrative writing units up here. And again, this is all based off of stuff that's a part of our EB Teachers Club. And then House on Mango Street is my book that I'm teaching. And I have all of my lessons planned out here. So I know, okay, this day for my 90-minute class period, I'm going to be introducing narrative writing. That's a little bit shorter. Anticipation stations are a little bit shorter. So I have time for my vocabulary. So I'm really finagling my schedule and also being incredibly intentional about what I'm teaching on any given day. And having a scope and sequence like this is going to allow me to do that as opposed to flying by the seat of my pants. Here I know where I'm hitting these language standards. Here I know where I'm hitting all of these narrative writing standards, all of these reading for literature standards, speaking and listening standards. I can see it front and center in my August scope and sequence of all of the standards that I'm covering. So I know, gosh, look at all that I'm able to fit in this month. And these are just those main standards for each of these units. Those don't even cover those sub-standards that I'm also just inherently teaching on a day-to-day basis. So setting myself up for success using a scope and sequence like this is incredibly helpful. So what I'm pointing out to you here in essence is that this is a framework to use when planning, right? Just like these are frameworks to use when planning. So you create a framework for yourself of perhaps you do vocabulary the way that I've suggested here, or perhaps you do grammar the way that I've suggested, etc. Let's say that you have a 40-minute class period. What we teach our EB teachers to do is perhaps they only teach writing on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then reading happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and grammar is on Fridays, right? So you make an adjustment, you create a framework for yourself, and then you stick to that framework. So whatever it is that you decide to do, you're creating that framework for your planning, and you get to then just plug and play your lessons. It provides you with a super clear structure, so you're not pulling your hair out trying to fit everything in all the time. And the one big takeaway for this that I think that is going to help you when you sit down to do this is to really think about your standards. These are your North Star. You get to be super, super intentional with what you're doing in your class period when you go to sit down and create this framework for yourself. All right, hopefully you found that helpful, and now it's time to actually put these strategies into action. It's great to sit here and watch a video. It's another thing to actually go out into the world and get it done. So take these concepts, apply them into your classroom, and start to see how things change for you in terms of being able to cover all of the standards that you need to cover as an ELA teacher. Again, subscribe to our channel. So great to spend time with you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.